Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Leverage Your Podcast show. And I have none other Daniel J. Lewis, who is a Hall of Fame podcaster. I mean, he's had Audacity to Podcast, which has been, getting awards, two-time award-winning podcast. He is the founder of Podgagement and the one of the founders of the International Podcast Day, which I didn't realize until this morning, which is super cool. So nice to finally meet you, Daniel.
Lindsay, it's great to talk with you. And I always love talking about podcasting too.
Yes, who doesn't?
Yeah.
So, that is so we were just talking off air, and I didn't realize that International Podcast Day has actually been around since, what'd you say, 2013?
I believe so, is when we first had the conversations
Wow.
when Steve, the gentleman who started it, approached me and said, "Hey, I've got this idea. We've got all of these holidays for other things. There's,
Yeah.
National Seniors Day, International Donut Day, and all of this stuff. Why don't we have a day to celebrate podcasts and podcasting?" And so we picked September 30th because it's around the anniversaries of several things significant to podcasting
Mhm.
and an easy to remember date, the last day
Yeah.
of September. And International Podcast Day was born. And now no one knows about the founders, and that's fine. We didn't do it
Yeah,
for ourselves, we did it for podcasting. And so now you hear people on the news talking about Happy International
totally.
Podcast Day. What are you listening to these days?
I know. That is super cool. And yeah, and people even have events surrounding International Podcast
Yes.
Day, going live, sharing great podcasts. Yeah, what a legacy that you've created. I love it.
Thank you.
So nowadays, you've created Podgagement. So before we dive into some strategies, I just want people to hear, why you created it and just kind of give us an overview.
Sure. Podgagement as a product has existed for more than 10 years now. And so I have to
Oh,
jump
okay.
back to the history is originally it was under the brand name My Podcast Reviews. And that's all that it did is it tracked your podcast reviews because when your podcast goes into Apple Podcast, it goes out to automatically up to 175 other countries inside of Apple Podcasts. Each country has their own catalog with their own ratings, reviews, and rankings for podcasts. So to check all of them for a while, it was completely impossible to check all of
Totally.
those places if you had reviews in other countries. Like just think about if you're an American podcaster, you might have reviews from Canada, our
Hmm.
neighbors, and you wouldn't be able to see that. But even now, there are some manual ways you can do it, but it takes a whole lot of clicking just to see if something's there. So, my podcast reviews I created to track all of that automatically for podcasters and send them their reviews. But along the way, I started thinking, well, reviews are just a form of engagement. And I really want to do more to help podcasters because when an audience member leaves a review, that's a one-time thing. They can't leave
Yeah.
multiple reviews. You can't have a back and forth conversation in the reviews platform. It's just a one-time thing, and you can think that in your episodes. So I really wanted to focus on engagement because as talking to podcasters, I realized what we love the most, I think, what really gets us going. I know a lot of podcasters want to monetize or they want to be popular or anything like that. But I think what, at the end of the day, to use that phrase, at the end of the episode, we could say, what matters, I think, most to especially independent podcasters is the relationships we made along the way. Oh my gosh, that sounds so Disney. But it is, it is true that it's the engagement that really powers us. Sometimes we could have 1,000 people listening or more than that and no interaction. And we might feel like we're not making a difference. We're not entertaining anyone. We're not inspiring anyone. But if we receive that one message that says, wow, you changed my life, that is powerful. So that's
Yeah.
the kind of thing I wanted to help podcasters with, not just tracking the reviews. So I rebranded, rebuilt the product. It's now Podgagement, focusing on podcast
Smart.
engagement and letting you track not only the ratings and reviews, but now also collecting voicemails from your audience or written feedback from your audience, helping you discover networking opportunities with other podcasters, helping you to grow your audience through intelligent landing pages, helping you to monetize your podcast through a smart page that you can share through podcasting 2.0 technology and more to help you to get tips or donations or gifts from your audience, ways that you can track your search engine ranking inside of the
Mm,
podcast app so you can see how you can make your podcast more findable inside the app. So all of these things around improving and then measuring the engagement with your audience, not the size of the
yeah,
audience, but more like the depth of the relationship with the audience.
that's impressive. That packs a lot. I didn't realize there was that much in it. Um, Now, podcasts often feel like a one-way street, right? Where we're just pushing out content. Actually, I saw a quote today. Who was it? Niall McKay, and he said, "Podcasting is not broadcasting." And I went, "Ooh, that's good." Um, but a lot of people don't really think of it in ways of like it's a relationship with the audience. Why is that a flawed view?
Well, I think because we sometimes lump podcasting with other forms of media. Like if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, you don't feel like you have a relationship with the hobbits or even the cast of the movie. You've watched the movies and that's it. Sometimes TV shows, you might feel like you get to know the character, but still, you're not having a relationship with a real person. You're seeing a character, you're seeing someone act in the show. If you follow YouTube shows and such, you might start to feel like you have a relationship, but still, even things like YouTube are pretty much sit down and consume the content things. Podcasting is very different because you take podcasts with you in places where
True.
you can't consume video, like in the car or while mowing the yard or doing yard work. And sometimes you can't even take other people with you to have conversations in these contexts, like in the bathroom or while mowing the yard. Or, you never see someone walking along someone else mowing the yard, trying to have a conversation with them, walking back and forth across the grass. That just doesn't happen. But people listen to podcasts. And there's also a subtle, more intimate connection because people are putting the voices literally directly in their ears through earbuds or
Right.
headphones. So they're taking these conversations with them in more places. And the other thing that's really exciting is podcasting has always been tightly connected with passion because podcasts can exist about any passion. That's what really tied me into podcasting in the early days is because I discovered here I could find shows about exactly what I wanted to hear about. You can find niche topics, you can find
It's
broad
insane.
topics, you can find broad topics that are covered by niche perspectives that align with your own perspectives and beliefs and anything like that. And so you really start to feel seen, you feel connected to these people because you start to realize we have a lot of similar interests, a lot of
Mm.
similar perspectives, or they have helped me, they've inspired me. I've brought them in my ears with me in many different places. So we start to build this deeper connection. And I think some podcasters just don't realize that until they start to receive that feedback from their audience.
That is true. It feels very intimate, and I love how inclusive it is. Like you said, you can find episodes on absolutely everything. And I think as well, in maybe those minorities, or if you have a problem or medical issue or whatever, you really do feel seen and heard and connected with something bigger than yourself and connected with other people in a way where normally you wouldn't, because you can only meet so many people in your little geographical area.
Yeah, especially when the audience starts connecting with each other
Ooh,
too.
yes.
That's when the real magic starts to happen, when you can form that community where they're starting their own conversations with each other, building friendships around the common interest of your podcast.
Yeah, so true. And so, how do we get that engagement? How do we change what we do with the podcast so that we're not just speaking out, but we're connecting in a bigger way or engaging?
You have to leverage what you can. But even if you've had no engagement yet, the way you get that first engagement is asking good questions. And
Mhm.
sometimes you might need to poke the bear just a little bit. I'm not saying you need to come out and proclaim yourself as some horrible person you don't have to try to be the shock person, but do stir up just a tiny bit of healthy controversy or conversation can be a good way to inspire that first conversation.
True.
Get someone to disagree with you or to say, "Oh man, that really fires me up too." So you want to really touch into passion. And to do that, ask some of those questions. Don't just ask, "What did you think of this episode?" Because
Mm,
people might just think, "Yeah, it was fine." And they're not going to send that as feedback. That's just their thought. But ask them a specific question. Like, based on what I've shared with this episode, tell me when you try these techniques, tell me what kind of results you get. I'd love to hear from you what results you get. Or you might say, I know I've probably forgotten something in this list of tips. So what's been something that's really helped you? Or you cover something like a tools episode and you share your favorite tools for whatever that thing is that you talk about, and then you invite your audience. What's a tool that you love that I didn't mention? So just get some engagement, something to get
yeah.
something from them. Then when you have the engagement, use that in your
Right.
podcast because that does three powerful things, whether that engagement is through ratings and reviews or it's feedback or voicemails. Including your audience's engagement in your podcast does these three powerful things. First, for that person who sent that feedback, whatever method it is, they will feel seen and heard. And there's a higher chance that then they'll be like, look, mom, I was on a podcast. So they can become an evangelist for your podcast because they'll start to tell everyone else, look, they answered my question, or they shared my tip, or they told my funny story, or anything like that. So include your audience because that turns them into a super fan and a potential evangelist for your show. The second thing it does is for other people then who hear that, they'll think, hey, I want to be on the
Mm,
podcast too. I want my tip read out too. I want to get a shout out also. I want my funny story told. I want this on the podcast. I want to be involved in this too. So then that inspires other people to engage as well at that same kind of engagement that you're asking for. So it starts to grow exponentially, the engagement in that way. And yeah, you might start out with the same few people in the beginning, but it's going to grow over time as more people get inspired and get ideas of how they could engage as well. The third thing it does is for everyone else listening who maybe hasn't engaged yet or doesn't plan to engage, it boosts your authority and reputation with them because they're starting to see, wow, she listens. She really cares about her audience. She answered this question that her audience had, answered it thoroughly, took her time. That's so awesome. Also, if you have the chance, if you get the data of where someone is from, like different countries,
mm,
make sure that you mention that because that can also boost your authority because people might think, oh, yeah, you're an American podcaster, you've got an American audience, but then they hear, whoa, you've got someone listening in Saudi Arabia
right.
and you've got someone listening in the United Kingdom and all of these other countries. So when you can start to mention your audience and where they're from, that boosts your authority and reputation to the rest of your audience so that then if they decide to engage, it's almost like they come to it with a bit more respect and a bit more appreciation, realizing you are so awesome. I'd love for you to answer this question or include me in this way in your podcast in this engagement. So it really starts to build in all of those three ways.
That is so good. And they are like things that you just don't think about. You're recording your podcast, you're doing your thing, you publish it. But those little tiny steps are so doable if you weave it into your process. Yeah, I've never thought of it that way before. Amazing. That's so good. And so, how does Podgagement help with that? You have the ability of leaving voicemails, you said?
Yeah, in Podgagement, there are two different tiers. So in the higher tier, which is called Constellation, it includes all of the features right now. So in that tier, you get the option to get a landing page, and all of the landing pages that we provide are very single action driven and provide a speakable URL in case you don't have the means or aren't interested in making a redirect on your own domain. So for example, my own podcast feedback page for the Audacity podcast is podcastfeedback.com/audacity. So I can say, if you want to send the podcast some feedback, go to podcastfeedback.com/audacity. See, it's very speakable, it's
Hmm.
memorable. And on that page, then they're presented with two buttons. Not all of this stuff like, here's how you follow the podcast, here's how you rate and review, here's how you do this and that. It's really focused on just feedback. Two buttons, write a message or record a message. And so they can send a voicemail through there and they can attach their name and even attach a little bit more written context with that in case
Mm.
like they mention a URL in their voicemail and they want to make sure that the URL is spelled correctly for you. So they can send that. And then that goes to the podcaster. It goes in their inbox, also automatically emails to them. They can then download the MP3 of that voicemail. They see the
Hmm.
transcript so they can see what the feedback is about. And they can use that then in their upcoming episode. Or if it's just a written message, they can read that in their upcoming episode. So it's making it very easy because so much of what I've built with Podgagement is around this one core idea. And this is why I emphasize both I want to enable this and I try to educate podcasters to do this too. Make it easy.
Yeah.
Don't make your audience jump through all these hoops. Even your calls to action, make it easy. And like one of the other landing pages we have is for leaving ratings and reviews. So instead of a podcaster saying, hey, if you listen to an Apple podcast, please click the little button here, scroll down to the bottom, and leave us a rating and review. If you're on Spotify, leave us a rating over there.
Mm.
If you're on this platform, do this. If you don't use any of these, then go. See, I'm just complicating the
Yeah,
call to
yeah. You're
action.
like my head's spinning.
Yeah. Whereas with Podgagement, we offer a lovethepodcast.com page. So then your call to action can be if you love the podcast, then please give us a 5-star review through lovethepodcast.com. And then that page is focused on that one task of helping them to leave a rating and a review. And there's even the option that you can enable reviews directly on that page. So someone who doesn't use Apple Podcasts or any of those other few
Yep.
apps,
Me.
yeah, they can leave a review right there without
Mm.
even having to create an account. And then that goes into the system because it's not where the reviews live that matters.
Okay.
It's that you collect them and how you use them.
So that was a very good segue. So what is let me backtrack. So there has been a lot of chatter conversation about reviews, especially on Apple, that they are the be all and end all and they will make you or break you. And then there's like, no, that's not the case. It doesn't impact your rankings. Um, so dive into that a little bit about how important reviews are and why.
First, there is the social proof aspect of it
100%.
that you see, oh, a lot of people really like this podcast. Yeah, that in that sense, that does matter, but not as much because many of these podcast apps that people use these days don't even display that social proof at all because they don't have a ratings and reviews system built into them. Like
Mm,
Overcast, for example, one of the most popular non-Apple, non-Spotify podcast apps on iPhones is Overcast. It doesn't have anything about ratings and reviews in it. So
hmm,
you don't see any of that social proof. But in some of the platforms, like even Apple Podcasts, if you're searching for a podcast on a topic that you're interested in, you won't even see that social proof until you've tapped into that podcast to then see the description and more information about it. And not everyone will then start going back and forth and comparing how many ratings and reviews and the level of one podcast to the other. They'll do that with products where money is on the line,
yeah, that's
but
true.
not so much with podcasts. They really want to see the relevance of the information. But nonetheless, just simply having some reviews, that does give a little bit more social proof. But beyond that, in the algorithms, ratings and reviews are not factored in, which is good because there are plenty of places you can find them on Fiverr where people will pay for fake ratings and reviews. And don't do that,
Oh,
by the way. Don't try and hire the professional podcast promoters who message you through LinkedIn or Facebook
no.
or on Fiverr, any of that. They'll just give you a lot of fake stuff, fake downloads, fake ratings and reviews. That won't help you. And in fact, in some cases, it can get you kicked out of Apple Podcasts if they catch you
Mm,
manipulating the system. So the ratings and reviews themselves do not affect how you appear in the ranking. Not in the top charts. They won't make you rank better. Not in search results. And you might be asking, listener, what does make you rank
yeah.
better in these? So I'll answer that quickly. For the charts, the top podcast rankings, it is the currency of podcasts, which is really followers, or we used to call them subscriptions. So how
Oh,
many people are following this podcast? And as these platforms are maturing, they're also measuring how much the episodes are being consumed within their own platforms and their own ecosystem. So they start to factor that into the ratings and, or excuse me, the rankings for the shows. So that's in the charts. It's really about how much listenership are you getting in recent days?
Hmm.
Because if the charts were based on total lifetime listenership, then it would always be the same podcasts on the top, and it'd be very difficult to get into the charts. So the charts are reflecting what is trending right now, what's popular right now. The search ranking is a little bit different. Search ranking is
Oh,
based on total lifetime audience, but that comes after what I hope would be obvious, keyword match. And
yeah.
that keyword match occurs in multiple places in the podcast title, in the episode titles. A lot of people don't think about that. Sometimes in some apps, but not Apple Podcasts, but sometimes the description is factored in. But other podcast apps are also starting to automatically, in the background, transcribe the episodes. So they're starting to use that for search as well. So
Hmm.
the big thing is if you want your podcast to rank better for something, talk about that thing you want to
Yeah,
rank
yeah.
better and name your episodes accordingly. It's like, oh wow, I never thought of that. It's so profound, but it makes so much sense. If you want to be found for something, you need to be creating content for
Yeah.
that thing you want to be found for. And Podgagement, by the way, has a tool to be able to track how you're doing in the search rankings inside the app. So that's a lot of fun because people can enter, I want to be found for this, and they can start to
Mm,
track how they're ranking for that. But it's really, I know a lot of people think, oh, I need to get into the charts so that I can grow my audience. But the way
right.
you get in the charts is by growing your audience. I know
Yeah.
it's a bit circular,
Counterintuitive.
but you really think about it as I need to get momentum because once you build momentum, then you can grow more.
Yeah. 100%. And it is great to like, on your podcast page to showcase some of the great reviews.
Absolutely.
And same with when you're trying to get guests on your show, or it's just extra credibility that does go a long way. But it's good to know that it's not the focus of how to rank, because I find some podcasters will they're so focused on asking for reviews all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, you want to ask for reviews, but meanwhile, it's like if it doesn't completely matter, then maybe you could have a different call to action that could generate leads or whatever. Like it really impacts your strategy.
Yeah. And think about if you have 1,000 reviews that say great podcast, that is not worth as much as one review where that person describes how your podcast has impacted them. Because that really think of it as reviews could be testimonials. And with a
100%.
testimonial, you hit on it, Lindsay. You could go to other potential guests to have on your podcast and you could show them, hey, look what people are saying about my podcast. Would you like to be part of this? Would you like to make this kind of change in people's lives? You could also use that to approach sponsors to say, look
Yes.
at the influence that I have over this audience demographic and look how much they love me. They really do love me. You can show them, look at this. I Some of your reviews might even mention specific things that you've recommended and how your audience has loved that thing that you've recommended. And sponsors might want to get in on that. So it's really what you do with the reviews that matters more than where they exist.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because some people do get them and they look at them, but they don't share them. They just like don't know what to do with them.
Right.
So you mentioned, I just want to ask you one quick question going back to like the charts and the data. So I know Podgagement pulls in some of that data. So are you saying that it's almost like an aggregate where it's pulling from all these different places so that you get like a better overview?
Right. So you can very quickly see, let's take the rankings, for example. So
Yeah.
we are tracking nearly 34,000 different global charts in Apple
Holy Hannah.
Podcasts. And so we can see where you're ranking in what countries and what genres, and we'll show that to you. Not just your current ranking. We do make that
Mhm.
really easy so you can see where you're currently ranking right now, but also your historical ranking. And we've been
Oh,
tracking this now for more than 6 years at the hourly detail level. So you
dang.
can start to see certain patterns from that. Like there are some podcasts when I can just look at their ranking and know That's when you published an episode. That's when you published an episode. Because you'll see they constantly jump back
Yeah.
up the charts whenever they publish an episode. An insight you can learn from that is, oh, so if I want to stay in the rankings, maybe I should try and publish more episodes.
Ah,
But I'll say, if you're thinking of that, try not to chase the charts, but instead always focus on quality over quantity. Nonetheless, you could still find some ways to build that into your strategy. Like maybe if you have an episode where you do an interview and your own solo education, maybe split those out into two separate episodes. So you have an interview episode and the solo education episode. So you're publishing twice as many episodes, but it's still the same amount of content. So there are some ways you can be creative with that in your strategy.
yeah, that's smart. And there's so much information that you can glean above and beyond the downloads, correct? Because the
Yes.
downloads, it was kind of like the staple. Like, you got to check your download numbers. What are the download numbers? But things have changed, A, because of Apple, and download numbers have gone down because of how Apple handles that. But then also there are like consumption numbers. And so for those out there that are just confuddled by any numbers, how do you explain what to look for?
The downloads still do matter, and
Yeah.
Apple's change primarily affected what happens with past episodes, not so much what happens with your current episodes. So what's important about the downloads to keep in mind is it does include both if someone just presses play and hasn't pre-downloaded the episode, that is
Mm,
still technically a download. The downloads are tracking only what happens inside podcast apps. So it's not tracking what happens on YouTube. But it is also
right.
tracking what's on your website because your website can be downloading or providing that file from the same URL. So it can track website plays as well as podcast plays. So that still gives you a good idea of how many people have downloaded this. The other metrics to look at on top of that would be your consumption data that is proprietary to the platforms. Like Apple Podcasts has their own consumption analytics, Spotify has their own. If you also publish your episodes over on YouTube, whether in what I call fake video, which is just a static image with
Right.
audio, or if
Fake
it's
video.
real video, you can look at your consumption analytics
Hmm.
there too. But keep in mind, YouTube consumption is very different from podcast consumption.
Yeah.
So while it can still be a little bit insightful, don't put a whole lot of weight into it because just one example here is on YouTube, you will typically see a big drop in the first minute of any video because it's a lot of people get recommended a video and they think, oh, this looks maybe interesting. They click on it and they decide, actually, no, it's not interesting. And they bail. That happens a lot on YouTube. That
Yeah.
kind of thing doesn't happen so much on podcasts because the consumption and discovery is very different there. You will always see a downward decline, but what you want to look for is are people skipping certain sections? And so you'd see a dip in the retention or how much of the episode is consumed at that point, or how many people are listening at the end of the episodes versus at the beginning. So then you can start to make decisions like, well, if I have really important information or a call to action to share, maybe mention that in the middle or in the beginning half of the episode instead of saving it for the very end. Or maybe try to tease more of the value that's coming near the very end. You know, kind of the thing in the TV world where they say, don't go away at the end, we've got
Yes.
such and such. So they're trying to get you to stick around. You can do some of that in your podcast as well and help educate your audience on how they can consume your podcast and get the most value from it.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I find the stats, a lot of people just glaze over and they see the numbers, but they don't really know what they mean, or they don't know how to make changes or decisions based on those facts.
The biggest thing really is look for trends.
Yeah.
Don't think so much about the raw numbers, but look at like if a typical measurement that we have in podcasting is downloads per episode, not per week, per day, or per month, any of that, but downloads per episode after about 30 days. And you can look at different benchmark lines along the way, like 3 days, 7 days, and so on. But what you want to see is you want to see an upward growth trend.
Hmm.
So maybe episode one, you've got 20 downloads after 30 days. Episode 2, you've got 25. Episode 3, you've got 30. Episode 4, you've got 35. So looking at the same benchmark points, then you can start to see the trend. Don't think about the numbers, but the trend is I am growing. And that's a
Yes.
whole lot more encouraging than thinking
Oh,
I've got only 20 people listening, which
yeah.
think about a room of 20 people coming every week to listen to you. That's still a good thing.
100%, especially if you have loyal listeners that,
Yeah,
show up every week after week after week. And even like looking at the data, you can see which shows got the most attention. So it's like, ooh, maybe I need to do more solo episodes on that. So it can totally help you kind of figure out what guests, what content, what topics that resonate.
exactly. Yeah, and start to make decisions for future content based on what you can glean from past content.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I saw something on your website for Podgagement, and I was like, that sounds cool, but I have no idea what that is. And it was that you can get in-person subscribers with a podcast beacon NFC key fob. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, so NFC, near field communication, is this technology inside of a lot of smartphones these days. It's
Okay.
what if you ever use Apple Pay in a store where like
Right.
you tap your phone or your watch or Google Pay or something like that, you tap it to something that's working through NFC, where it's this little radio signal that happens between things that are very close to each other, like within inches or even
Yeah.
closer than that. They pretty much almost have to touch for it to work. That's NFC technology, near field communication. And the podcast beacon, I've partnered with Matthew Passy over at podcastbeacon.com to make this technology available. What it does is it gives you different methods or different physical things that you could use. Like it could be a key fob that you put on your keychain. It could be a bracelet. There are other ideas of maybe if you wear an Apple Watch or a smartwatch, it
Yeah.
could be built into the band for your watch, or it could be a little thing that you stick on a poster or a business card, or all of these different ideas. But the point is, what it does is it makes it so that if someone taps their smartphone to your NFC beacon, then it triggers a notification on the smartphone that they can tap on and it takes them to a website. And on that website, you can do then different things. So, talking about Podgagement, then one of the other landing pages that we offer is a follow the podcast landing page. So you
Mm.
can say follow the podcast.com/audacity to follow the podcast and get every episode automatically. So that pairs perfectly with this NFC beacon because if someone is interested in getting your podcast, if you tell them to visit a URL and you're in person, you tell them to visit a URL, they have to unlock their phone, they have to go to their browser, they have to type in that URL, or even if they want to subscribe inside their podcast app, they
Right.
have to open the podcast app after unlocking their phone. They open the podcast app, they search for your podcast name, then they have to show you, is it this one? Because there might be, depending on the search results, there
Totally.
might be other shows that use the same name or a similar name. They might even outrank your show. I really encourage podcasters, don't rely on people finding you even by your own
Yes.
name. So the beacon, though, what it's doing is without even unlocking the phone, it pops up that notification on the phone when the smartphone touches the beacon. So then all the person has to do is tap on that notification. It opens the browser to that landing page. And from that landing page, if it's smartly designed, which is what we do through Podgagement, and you can make the beacon point to other pages too. But the best thing to do on that page is make it smartly detect the device the person is using
Oh, wow.
and then display only options that are compatible with that device. For example, Apple Podcasts is still, as an app, it's only available on Apple devices and Windows. So if someone is on an Android device, Apple Podcasts should not be displayed to them because that's a pointless, that's just wasting space and
Hmm.
giving them extra buttons that they have to look at or read. So instead, you could feature an Android option for Android users, and that could be like Podcast Addict or Pocket Casts or Spotify. So design the page, and we do this automatically for you if you use Podgagement, but if you're building it yourself, design that page that can detect the devices and display only what's compatible with the device. And then the user, when they see that, can simply tap on the icon for their preferred app. It takes them to the app. Again, they tap on the button to then follow that podcast or subscribe to it, whatever language the app uses. So in all of this process, all they've had to do is a few taps of their
Wow.
fingers instead of typing anything,
Oh,
having to
yeah.
find. So it makes
Making
it,
a note, forgetting about it.
yeah, exactly. So the whole notification thing, and what I love about it is it displays that notification without their even having to unlock their phone first. So it's even more convenient than a QR code. You can do
Right.
something very similar with a QR code, and I do recommend that too as a great thing. Put it on your business cards, a QR code to your follow page or whatever that is, because it can work very similarly where it can then display those smart options. But still, a QR code requires more action
Manual
than the
action.
beacon does because the person still has to unlock their phone, open their camera, point it at the thing, and oh, hold on, no, it's not focusing. Wait, wait, oh,
Totally.
okay, now it's focused. Now it got it. Okay, I got to tap on that. So it does take a little bit more work. QR codes are great. But I think the beacon is even better. Just don't give away your beacons. It's something
Yes.
that you hold on to. And if you've got it on your wrist or in your on your watch band or on a card or something like that. I've seen some people will put it on like they'll clip it to their shirt so you can tap a phone to
Oh,
their collar, or if you're at a conference, slip your
yeah.
NFC beacon into your name badge. So then people just
Ooh.
tap their phone to your name badge, and that can be a way that they can get it. So it's a really neat technology, and I'm really excited about future potential for it. But just what it can do right now is
Yeah.
really nice. And it's all about, again, making it easy for you and for your audience or potential audience.
Yeah. 100%. That is slick. Especially at events. Like, dude, that is so cool. That is
Yeah.
awesome. Good for you. Like, I feel like Podgagement has so many features that just like you said, makes it easy to like pull all that information in, know all your stats, engage with your listeners, understand what all your reviews are for credibility and social proof. Because yeah, going to all the different little places, oh my God, what a time suck.
Yeah. I counted it, did some math and counted it. If for just one podcast,
Uh-huh.
Podgagement can save people more than 11 million mouse clicks per day to do what Podgagement does automatically.
Mouse clicks. That's
Yes.
so good.
That is not an exaggeration. I did actually calculate, okay, doing this thing as many times as we do it for you would take this many clicks to do it yourself, or this thing, good luck trying to do that manually. Like the networking feature, which I want to mention this because there's some ways that people can track this manually, but the way that we do it is impossible for them to track. But if you look at a podcast, like if you're a podcaster and you have your own podcast in Apple Podcasts, look at your podcast, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see a you might also like or listeners also listen to kind of thing. Those recommendations are algorithmically generated by Apple Podcasts based on crossover audience. So when you look at your own podcast, you'll see up to 15 linked out to other places, even without paying anything. Without using Podgagement, look at that list. Here's the tip for you that you can do this for free right now. Look at that list, try to reach out to those other podcasts, and
Oh,
you can talk about guest promotion opportunities, cross guesting, collaboration opportunities, even maybe a little bit of competitive research with them. But it's really like networking opportunities. So you can see up to 15 that's outgoing linked from your own listing. And Podgagement also tracks that for you. So you can see that inside of Podgagement. What Podgagement does on top of this, so you can see that information for free in Apple Podcasts when you look at your podcast
mhm.
listing. Podgagement also tracks of the millions of other podcasts out there, which of them have your podcast in their outgoing recommendations. So we call that
Ah.
incoming networking. And that is often a much bigger list. So your outgoing list, most it can be is 15. I've
Mhm.
seen podcasts with an incoming list of nearly 500 podcasts. So that's more
Wow.
crossover audience and more opportunities to see. You could try to be a guest on all of those other podcasts. Or you could
Ooh.
maybe, if you're wanting guests on your own podcast, you could reach out to those other podcasters and you can say, hey, I noticed we have some crossover audience based on this information I saw in Podgagement. So would you like to be a guest on my podcast? I'd love to have you talk about what you do. So it's networking opportunities and that kind of thing. That's one of those things that the only way for you to track that yourself
Oh my God.
is to look at all of the millions of podcasts, every
No.
single one of them. So that's one of the things that we do. And like all of this, I want to make it easy for podcasters. I'm a podcaster myself. We've barely even talked about my own podcast is about podcasting as well.
Yes.
The audacity to podcast. I've been podcasting for more than 15 years and I love podcasts. I love podcasters. I love podcasting. So I built this both for myself and for you because I want to make it easy for you as a podcaster to do what's more important, what's more fulfilling with your podcast.
That networking thing is crazy because think about just like tapping into audiences that are like perfect for you in
Exactly.
like, just by networking. There's so many opportunities that people just don't realize, or having tools like yours that make it possible, and just even knowing what's possible. And I'm like, if you make a few of those little incremental changes, how much it can help you grow and be seen and heard. Yeah, I love it. It excites me so much.
Yeah, so I'm going to say here for you listening, use Lindsay's affiliate link so that she gets a little cut. So yes, she does get paid. She's not being sponsored by me or paying me or anything like that. So she only gets paid if you sign up through her link, smoothbusinessgrowth.com/podgagement. So if you want to try it out, I'd love to have you using Podgagement, but make sure you sign up through Lindsay's link.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. And so many good features. Darn. So what's coming up for Podgagement? Because knowing you now, I'm sure you were looking for more ways to even help podcasters.
Well, this is where we have to break the fourth wall a little bit because we're recording this episode earlier in the year, and
Yes.
I've referenced some features that at the time of this recording aren't available yet, but have
Uh,
come out probably by the time that you're
yeah,
listening to this. So to tease features beyond that, I'm not quite ready yet.
that's okay.
But the thing I'll say is I listen to my users
Mhm.
because I'm a podcaster myself. And especially when users say, I've been thinking about this thing. Is there any way to make it do this? And then my podcaster brain is like, oh, that's a great idea. You mean like you want them to do this, and you want to use it for this and that? And they're like, oh man, I didn't even think about that. But yes, that's exactly what I want. So that's the kind of thing. It's really a user-driven development cycle. And
Mm.
I love serving the users better. And I love it when they say, yes, that's exactly what I wanted.
Ooh, yay. Yeah. When software actually listens to their users, and it's almost like a collaboration, right? And then
Yeah.
you get like new ideas and you feel inspired, and yeah, how fun. That is so fun. You've changed it already so much. I didn't realize you had it that long. So cool.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you came on the show. That was so much fun, and you've given so many good pieces of advice that people can easily implement, and then also even just to see what's possible. And as you, the listener, to grow your podcast, definitely go to smoothbusinessgrowth.com/podgagement and check that out. And thank you. I'm so glad we finally met.
Lindsay, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
All right, folks, have a great day, and I will see you in a couple of weeks on the next episode of the Leverage Your Podcast Show. Take care.